Okay guys, we are on our last chapter of the year. So what I did was I combined a few of the important things on some different chapters. It's mostly 19 through 21 with a little bit of 16 sprinkled in. But we didn't need everything from those chapters, we just needed a few elements. So all I'm doing is giving you those elements from those chapters that are very important. So going back to chapter number 1, a population. This is a group of organisms that live together and they're capable of producing fertile offspring that can also reproduce. So all these dogs here, they are part of a species. They are all, canines, and they can all produce offspring. And that offspring might be a mix. We call them mutts, but they can still make offspring. So in a population, we are going to have genetic diversity. In other words, there's going to be something different between some of our members compared to other of our members. If you remember last chapter, we gave a phrase to that, and that was genetic variation. So there is genetic variation in our populations. When we are talking about this genetic variation, most of the time it's going to go with a bell curve. And this is a bell curve here. You guys can see it forms kind of like a bell, where most of the members of a population are going to be average. They're going to be in the middle. We are also going to have some low performers. I have here like guy that ate too many cheeseburgers, okay? Obviously he wouldn't be very fit. And on the other side, we got LeBron, okay? So a higher performer than the average person. This can also apply to like fish and other organisms, not just people, but fish length. We're going to find a lot of the fish are actually going to be of average length. We're not going to have a lot that are going to be gigantic because then they're using a whole lot of energy to swim. And if they're too small, they're easy prey, so they get eaten. So the biggest ones probably die, the smallest ones probably die, but the middle ones, they are going to flourish and reproduce. And this goes with trout here. You guys can see here, some of them can get to be gigantic, like 50 pounds. Some of them can be really tiny, like 8 pounds. But most of them, on average, they're going to be in that middle area of about 28 pounds. Now, here's a classic example of different traits. Now, this is across the pond. So over in Great Britain, England area, what was going on is they had all these birch trees, a long time ago. And you guys can see the birch trees are white in color. And what happened was they started, just like in America, they started the Industrial Revolution. So there was these moths, and they were peppered. Now, we had two different variations of these moths. We have this black variant with white spots and this white variant with black spots. And you guys can see the black one is obviously darker than the white spotted one. So what happened was the birch trees, which were originally white, blended our white moths in very easily. But once the Industrial Revolution happened, all this coal went into the air, and all this pollution, all this dust, debris, all this stuff, and it clung to the birch trees. And what happened was the trees actually turned darker. So originally we had a whole lot of white peppered moths because they were able to blend in, but we didn't have too many black ones because they weren't able to camouflage and they got eaten. But once the Industrial Revolution happened, the environment changed, and the favorable adaptation, that favorable trait, also changed to favor the black peppered moth because it was able to camouflage. And we saw this population go up and our white peppered moth's population go down because they were getting eaten. So when we are talking about variation, guys, and we talked about the black and the white peppered moths and the different dogs and all these different things, and fish, the size of them, we call this recombination. So we are creating genetic variation and we're reshuffling these genes in order for the offspring to not look the same as the parents. So another way we have variation, guys, now we were talking about mutation last time in the last chapter, but we also have our gametes, the sperm and egg. We have random pairings of our chromosomes, so that way we are giving the sperm, the egg, passing these things on to our kids. We're passing on random chromosomes. We're not picking all the same dominant chromosomes that give us the features we have. We might be giving them some features that are actually masked on us. So when we're talking about a population, we have something called a gene pool, and this is all of our alleles present in a population. So what we're doing is we are taking all of our alleles, and if you remember, a genotype is made up of 2 alleles. So for any genotype here, so for our genotype, we have 2 alleles. Like big R, which was homozygous dominant, big R, little r, which was heterozygous, and then we had little r, which was homozygous recessive. So each one of these has 1, 2 alleles. 1, 2 alleles. Okay? So each one has a first and a second allele. In our gene pool, we are putting each of these alleles in. I know for, if it's like complete dominance, we went over in the past, this little r is going to be masked. We are not going to see that at all. But we still got to put that in the gene pool, because if we pass that on, there's a chance that that little r could show up in the next generation. So here's pretty much a gene pool, guys. You could think of it like this, all of the genes in a population. You guys can see here, this probably, I guess, would be incomplete dominance, because we got like an orange color there. It's, I guess, a blend of brown and white, okay? But we have 3 different phenotypes here, and all of these alleles would be in the gene pool. Okay, 2 other things we're going to go over, guys, is gene flow and genetic drift. So gene flow, this is the movement of genes from one area to another. So 2 things that cause this is immigration and emigration, people coming into a population and people leaving, which is emigration, people leaving the population. So anytime people move around, or animals, okay, anything moves around, they take their genes with them. And what they can do is pretty much influence that gene pool. So as they move from one area to another, they take their genes and add it to a different gene pool. Now, if we're talking about, let's just talk about Ireland, where a good bit of people have red hair. If they went over to Africa, where not a lot of people have red hair, they would be adding that red allele to the population, and in time, it could change the whole population. Now, humans are not very good with this because we don't reproduce a whole lot, but if you have a weird allele in like the lion community or the rabbit community or even the sea turtle community, these are going to be ones that are going to be seen more than just humans because they breed more than humans. All right? Okay. We'll skip all the monkey stuff just to save time. And here's another example, guys. You can see the, I guess, grayish blue bird flying over to the pink birds over here. What can happen is they are bringing these recessive alleles over, and maybe not right away, but over time, we can start to get that gray-blue color on the other side. Okay, the other one, other than gene flow, guys, that I want to go over is called genetic drift. Now, genetic drift is on random. It does not do with fitness. So what's going to happen here, guys, is we are going to have some members of a population randomly die. It's based off of pretty much some kind of random event happens. The most common one that I always go over is we got a bug, okay? I don't know what this bug is, but it's a bug. Is it the most fit bug in the community? I don't know, maybe it is, okay? It might be the biggest, baddest bug of them all. And all of a sudden, something bigger comes in to that bug's territory. And obviously, oh my, the bug is dead. So something much bigger comes into that bug's community and could possibly kill the bug. Even though it's the biggest, baddest bug of them all, it doesn't matter because Sully here from Monsters Inc. would completely overpower the bug. Just like if we're walking down the street, okay, we step on some bugs and it happens. But it doesn't have to do with the fitness of the bugs, okay? You might just be accidentally stepping on the most camouflaged bug of them all. This is genetic drift. And what happens, guys, is it will eliminate some alleles in that gene pool that may be the fittest of them all. All right, next thing I'm going to go over, guys, is 3 types of natural selection. So we're going to go back to those bell curves that we talked about earlier. And the first one is called directional selection. So this is where individuals with the most extreme trait have the highest fitness. So what this means, the red line here, this is the original line. The blue line down here, this is going to be our new line. So most of the time, the most average, which would be right here, the most average individuals survive in a population. However, over time, we are going to have that area right there. Let me use a different color here. That area right there, that's our average. We're going to have it move to the more extreme because that is favorable. If you guys see here, these are anteaters, and this is a measure of the tongue length, okay? If they are in a, I guess like an ant or a termite mound or seeing ants somewhere and they're in a hole, the longer tongue is going to be more favorable because it can get those ants. It can reach them in, the hole or in a termite mound. So the smaller one, it's not going to be able to fit his head and its tongue in as much. So this is going to favor the tongues getting larger and going to that extreme. Another one here, guys, is these weird-looking lizards. Some of them have a really long tail, and they can scare off predators because predators think they're a snake instead. So they can kind of like just dangle their tail out, and they might think, oh, it's a snake. It's probably going to be poisonous. I don't want to go near it, even though it's just a lizard. So it favors a longer tail. And here's a picture of one in case you've never seen one. That's a really long one. Second one is called stabilizing selection. So stabilizing selection is where the average form of that trait has the highest advantage, has the highest fitness. So what's going to happen, and I'm going to draw even another line here, is over time, we are not going to have those extremes as much, and instead, we are going to favor that middle, that average area, so it will even get a little bit more to the middle over time and less to the extremes on both sides. So right there, that's your average. All right, and our number of animals just continues to increase in that average area, and that decreases the extremes on both sides. All right. An example of this is cats. All right, if you have a small tail as a cat, it's hard to balance. If you have a long, gigantic tail as a cat, you can have predators catch you very easily because the tail is so long. But if you have an average tail, it's harder for predators to catch you, and you can still balance. And there is a sticker that says me wow, because that's fun. All right. The last one is called disruptive. This is where the average is actually the worst of the two, and we are going to favor both extremes on each side. An example here is shells. So shells on the beach might be really good for being a lighter color because they'll blend in with the sand. Shells that are closer to the inland, they are going to be a darker color because they are going to blend in with that inland a little better. But the middle ones, the average, aren't going to blend in with either of them. So any organism that lives inside of there is going to get, picked apart and eaten because they're not blending in with the environment, whether it's right on the beach or inland on this side. So we're going to favor both sides based on that specific environment. All right, skip this one here. Okay, so we'll call it a day here, guys, and then we will finish up everything else with the chapter Next time, there won't be a test on this chapter, guys, just because I'm going to get through it quick, and then we are going to start on the Keystone review. Have a good rest of your day.